The first time I saw her, she was suspended in a containment field that shimmered like a dying star. The war had been going on for 11 years by then. Long enough that no one remembered what started it. Long enough that hatred had hardened into doctrine. Long enough that children were raised to believe the enemy was something less than alive. They called her species the Veilith. Predators. Conquerors. Devourers of systems. Monsters. I was Captain Elias Ward of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, and I had just captured one of their high commanders. She did not look like a monster. Her skin carried a faint opalescent sheen, shifting colors with subtle emotional changes. Silver eyes watched everything without blinking. Delicate cranial crests swept back from her temples like sculpted glass. She stood taller than me even within the containment field, posture straight, gaze steady. Defiant. Prisoner designation V'7, the automated system intoned. Captured at the Battle of Sargas Reach. Command authorization required for interrogation. I stepped forward, boots echoing in the steel chamber. You understand me? I asked. Her voice, when she answered, was smooth and resonant. Yes, human. No distortion. No translator lag. Perfect Terran standard. That unsettled me more than her claws. The war we inherited. The Veilith had entered our space without warning. Entire colonies went silent. Mining stations found hollowed. Warships drifted, stripped of power cores. When first contact finally came, it was in the form of a Veilith dreadnought cutting a human fleet in half with gravitational shear beams. We responded the only way humanity ever has. We fought back harder. And we survived. But survival had a cost. By year 11, both sides had burned dozens of worlds. Neither could claim victory. Neither would surrender. Until Sargas Reach. We ambushed her fleet inside a collapsing nebula. Ion storms disabled half their shields. Our cruisers punched through. Boarding teams flooded the flagship. That's where I found her. She was standing in the command well as explosions tore through bulkheads. Officers around her were dying, yet she didn't retreat. She was issuing orders until the moment my rifle was at her throat. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She simply looked at me and said, "Finish it." Instead, I stunned her. I still don't know why. Interrogation. For 3 days she refused food. For 5 days she refused to speak. For 7 days she stared through me like I was already dead. I reviewed her record. High Strategos. Architect of the Kether incursion. Responsible for the fall of 5 Terran colonies. Millions dead. And yet when I finally lost patience and slammed my fist against the containment field, she tilted her head slightly. You are conflicted, she observed. You're a prisoner, I snapped. You don't get to analyze me. She considered that. In your species, captives are not executed immediately. Not without trial. Even in war? Especially in war. Something shifted in her expression. A faint ripple of color across her cheekbones. You are inefficient, she said. I almost laughed. You wiped out civilian worlds. You believe we targeted civilians? The calm in her voice unsettled me again. Entire cities were erased. Yes, she said softly, because your fleet bases were hidden beneath them. That stopped me cold. That's a lie. She met my gaze without flinching. Your military embedded shield generators beneath population centers to mask their signatures. We destroyed the generators. I felt something unpleasant twist in my stomach. We had done desperate things early in the war. Classified things. But that... No, I said. You do not know everything your command does, Captain. I hated that she sounded sad. The attack. On the 12th day of her captivity, the station alarms went red. Unknown vessels emerging from slip space. I rushed to the command deck. Scanners lit up with Valeth signatures. But they weren't attacking. They were broadcasting. A single transmission. We patched it through. A Valeth elder appeared on screen, ancient and adorned with bioluminescent markings. Return Strategos Vera Talon, the elder demanded. So that was her name. In exchange, the elder continued, we will withdraw from 3 contested systems. Murmurs erupted across the bridge. 3 systems. That was a major concession. Admiral Chen appeared via holo. We do not negotiate with invaders, she said flatly. The elder's eyes narrowed. You misunderstand. This is not negotiation. This is mercy. Then the transmission cut. Their fleet moved into formation. Weapons charging. I felt the weight of what was about to happen. They weren't here to rescue her. They were here to erase us. The truth. I went back to the brig. She was standing when I entered. You know, she said quietly. They're going to attack. Yes. Because of you? No. Then why? Her silver eyes held something I hadn't seen before. Fear. I defied them, she said. That wasn't the answer I expected. I ordered a retreat at Sargas Reach. Our fleet could have destroyed your reinforcements, but it would have collapsed the nebula and annihilated 2 human colonies in the blast radius. I stared at her. They called it weakness. You spared civilians. Yes. Silence hung heavy between us. They came to silence me, she continued, not rescue me. My chest felt tight. If they retake me, she said, I will be executed. If they cannot, they will ensure I do not survive. The station shuddered as the first volley struck, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. She wasn't my enemy. She was their enemy too. The choice. Admiral Chen ordered all hands to battle stations. The Valeth fleet outnumbered us 3-1. We could hold. For a while. But reinforcements were days away. I stood outside her. Containment field, heart pounding. You spared human lives, I said. Yes. You could have won. Yes. Why? Her crest dimmed slightly. Because war does not require cruelty to be effective. That sentence hit harder than any plasma bolt. I deactivated the containment field. The shimmer faded. She didn't move. You're free, I said. Shock flickered across her features. You would release me during combat? I'm not releasing a prisoner, I said quietly. I'm trusting an ally. She studied me for a long moment. Then she stepped forward. Take me to your command deck. Betrayal or salvation. When we entered the bridge, weapons were seconds from overloading under sustained fire. Officers froze at the sight of her. Captain, what is this? Admiral Chen demanded. She can stop them. You're insane. Maybe, I said. But we're losing. Vera stepped toward the central console. I require access to your communications array. Chen hesitated only a second too long. Do it. Vera placed her hand against the interface. Biotech tendrils extended from her palm, merging with human circuitry. The main view screen flickered. The Valeth elder reappeared. Shock crossed the ancient face. Strategos. You came to execute me, Vera said calmly. You endangered our dominion. I preserved our honor. The elder's voice turned cold. You have been judged. And so have you. She transmitted something. Fleet-wide override codes. Command authority markers. I saw Valeth ships suddenly halt fire. Formations breaking. Confusion spreading. What did you do? I whispered. I still hold loyalists, she said. Many believe as I do. The elder snarled. You would fracture us? I would save us. Half the Valeth fleet peeled away from attack formation. The other half turned on them. Space erupted into chaos. Civil war. Because one commander refused to slaughter civilians. The cost of mercy. The battle lasted hours. When it ended, the Elder's flagship drifted, crippled. The loyalist Valeth vessels formed a defensive perimeter around our station. An uneasy silence settled. Vera sagged slightly, bioluminescence dim. "You've just ignited a revolution," I said. "Yes." "They'll hunt you." "Yes." "You can't go back." She met my eyes. "I know." Admiral Chen approached slowly. "You expect us to grant asylum?" Chen asked. "No," Vera replied. "I expect nothing." I stepped forward. "She saved us." Chen studied both of us carefully. "You realize what this means, Captain? Harboring her makes us participants in their internal conflict." "We already are," I said. "Whether we admit it or not." Silence. Then Chen nodded once. "Very well. Temporary asylum." Relief flooded through me. Vera bowed her head slightly. "You risk much." "So did you," I said. Weeks later. The war didn't end overnight. But something changed. Valeth factions splintered. Some sought continued conquest. Others began opening communication channels. For the first time in 11 years, diplomats replaced dreadnoughts in contested sectors. Vera became an advisor. Unofficial, controversial, indispensable. We spoke often. Sometimes about tactics. Sometimes about philosophy. Once quietly about guilt. "Do you regret capturing me?" she asked one evening, staring at Earth's holographic projection. "No," I said honestly. Even knowing what it cost. I thought about the fleets lost. The political fallout. The fragile ceasefires. "I regret the war," I said. "Not setting you free." Her crest shimmered softly. "In my culture, debt is sacred." "This wasn't debt," I replied. "What was it?" I met her gaze. Faith. The final test. Peace talks were scheduled on neutral ground 6 months later. But extremists from both species had other plans. A human splinter group attempted to assassinate Vera during transit. Their shuttle breached our escort perimeter. I saw the explosion before I heard it. Her transport spun out of control. Without thinking, I launched in a pursuit fighter. I caught the shuttle as it plummeted toward an uninhabited moon. Docked mid-descent. "Force the hatch." She was conscious, bleeding silver blue. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I did." We stabilized thrusters together. Crashed hard but alive. Hours later, rescue teams found us sitting against the wreckage, watching sunrise over gray stone. "You could have died," she said. "So could you." "Why?" she asked again. The simplest answer felt the truest. "Because you're not my prisoner anymore." She studied me in that unreadable way. "What am I, then?" I smiled slightly. "Proof." "Of what?" "That we don't have to be what war makes us." The end of one war. The peace accords were signed 3 months later. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Borders redefined. Reparations negotiated. Demilitarized zones established. The Valeth civil conflict still simmered, but reformists gained ground. History would remember many battles. But it would never record the quiet moment in a containment chamber when one human chose not to treat an enemy like a monster. Years later, I stood on a joint Terran, Valeth station overlooking a shared colony world. Children from both species ran through artificial gardens. Vera stood beside me. "You altered the trajectory of 2 civilizations," she said softly. "We both did." She looked at the horizon where twin suns dipped below alien mountains. "In another life," she said, we would have killed each other. Maybe, I replied. But in this one, she said, you set me free. I shook my head gently. No. She tilted her head. You were already free, Vera. You just needed someone to believe it. Her crest glowed brighter than I'd ever seen. And for the first time since the war began, I felt something stronger than survival. Hope. The official end of the war came quietly. There was no final battle. No grand surrender broadcast across the stars. No triumphant fleets firing victory salutes. Just signatures. Ink on alloy tablets beneath neutral starlight. After 11 years of bloodshed, the Terran-Valith conflict ended with silence, the kind that felt almost fragile, as if the galaxy itself was afraid to breathe too loudly and break it. I stood at the observation gallery, overlooking the Concord Hall as delegates finished departing. Human officers in dark uniforms walked beside Valith envoys whose luminous skin reflected the chamber lights like living constellations. No one celebrated. Too many ghosts stood between us. Beside me, Vera watched the same scene. Her posture remained perfectly composed, but I had learned to read the subtle shifts in her coloration. Soft waves of violet and silver moved across her skin, relief mixed with exhaustion. It is done, she said. Yeah, I replied quietly. Feels strange, doesn't it? In my people's history, she said, wars end with domination. One side erased. One side victorious. She turned toward me. This ending is unfamiliar. That's humanity, I said. We specialize in messy solutions. A faint ripple of amusement passed through her crest. I have noticed the weight of survival. Peace didn't make heroes. It made survivors. Reconstruction fleets replaced warships. Medical convoys crossed former battle lines. Joint rescue missions searched asteroid fields for escape pods that had drifted for years. Sometimes they found people still alive. Those were the hardest days, because every survivor proved the war had lasted too long. I was reassigned as liaison commander to the 1st Joint Terran-Valith Colony Initiative, a political decision disguised as optimism. And Vera? She became something neither species had ever seen before. A bridge. To some humans, she was still a war criminal. To some Valith, she was a traitor. But to those building the future, she was proof that courage wasn't measured by how fiercely you fought, but by what you chose to protect. The Memorial World. 1 year after the Accords, we traveled to Kether 4. The world had once been a battlefield, its orbit filled with shattered ships, its continents scarred by orbital fire. Now it had been declared a memorial planet. No weapons allowed. No military presence. Only remembrance. We walked together across fields where metallic wreckage had been reshaped into monuments. Human names etched beside Valith glyphs. Shared loss. Shared blame. Shared grief. Children followed guided paths between memorial spires, asking questions their teachers struggled to answer. Why did they fight? No one ever had a simple explanation. Vera stopped before a massive sculpture formed from fused hull fragments, human steel intertwined with Valith bioalloy. Our histories will argue about this war for centuries, she said. Probably, I admitted. But they will not understand the turning point. I smiled slightly. You mean the giant fleet battle? The revolution? She looked directly at me. No. Her voice softened. The moment one human chose mercy over certainty. I shifted awkwardly. You give me too much credit. In my culture, she said, history is shaped by individuals who refuse inevitability. She placed a hand lightly against the cold metal of the monument. You ended the war the moment you opened that containment field. The question neither asked. Time changed things between us. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just small moments accumulating. Shared meals that turned into long conversations. Strategic debates that became philosophical arguments. Comfortable silences, watching unfamiliar stars. Trust, I learned, grows quietly. One evening aboard the joint station Horizon's Promise, we watched transports descend toward the colony below, humans and Valeth beginning new lives together. You never asked, she said suddenly. Asked what? Why I truly spared your colonies at Sargas Reach. I frowned. You said civilian casualties were unacceptable. That was true, she said, but incomplete. She hesitated. Something rare for her. I had studied humanity for years before the war. Your art, your transmissions, your stories. I laughed softly. We sent our movies into space again, didn't we? Yes, she said. And your stories fascinated me. How? They're filled with flawed beings choosing kindness despite fear. Again and again, your narratives insist compassion is strength. Her silver eyes met mine. I wished to know if it was true. And a faint glow spread across her features. It is. The last threat. Peace always attracts those who profit from war. 2 years after the Accords, a coalition of extremists, human and Valeth alike, attempted to sabotage the new alliance. They targeted the colony power core during its inaugural ceremony. Millions would have died. We discovered the plot minutes before detonation. There wasn't enough time to evacuate, only to stop it. The sabotage device was fused into the reactor lattice, unstable and impossible to disarm remotely. Someone had to enter manually. Radiation levels guaranteed fatal exposure. I was already moving toward the access shuttle when Vera blocked my path. You cannot, she said. I'm the closest qualified officer. You are also essential to maintaining trust between our species. So are you. Her crest flared with agitation. My physiology grants slightly greater resistance. Slightly isn't enough. We stared at each other, neither willing to yield. Finally, she said quietly, You once freed me because you believed my life had value beyond war. I swallowed. Yes. Then allow me to prove yours does too. Before I could respond, she sealed the hatch and launched. I watched through the viewport as her shuttle vanished into the reactor chamber. Minutes stretched into eternities. Radiation alarms screamed across every channel. Then, power stabilized. Detonation halted. The colony survived. Recovery teams pulled her from the chamber barely alive. For 3 days, she remained unconscious. I didn't leave the medical bay. Not once. Awakening, when her eyes finally opened, the first thing she saw was me asleep in a chair beside her bed. You stayed, she murmured. I woke instantly. Of course I did. Her bioluminescence flickered weakly. I calculated a 63% probability you would. I laughed despite the exhaustion. Still running probabilities? Yes, she said softly. But humanity continues to disrupt them. She reached out slowly, her hand resting over mine. In freeing me, she said, you changed my people. I shook my head. You changed them yourself. Perhaps, she admitted, but you changed me. Years later, the galaxy moved forward. Joint exploration missions launched beyond known space. Mixed crews became normal. Children grew up bilingual in Terran speech and Valeth resonance tones. The war faded into history lessons. On the 5th anniversary of peace, I stood again beside Vera overlooking a thriving world once marked for destruction. Cities shone beneath twin suns. Laughter carried through open air. Life, stubborn, relentless life, had won. Do humans have a word, she asked, for the feeling when suffering gives way to possibility? I thought for a moment. Hope, I said. She repeated it carefully. Hope. Her crest glowed warmly. In my language, the closest translation means the future choosing to exist. We watched children, human and Valeth, racing across the garden terraces below. No fear. No hatred. Just curiosity. After a long silence, she said quietly, You once told me I was no longer your prisoner. Still true. And you claimed I was already free. I nodded. She turned toward me, eyes reflecting the light of two suns. Then understand this, Elias, Ward of Earth. Her voice carried calm certainty. You are never my captor. I raised an eyebrow. No. No, she said gently. You were my liberation. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved through alien trees. Somewhere below, children laughed, a sound that had once seemed impossible between our species. The galaxy had feared humanity's strength. It had prepared for our weapons. What it had not prepared for was our mercy. And in the end, that was what changed everything.